What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering video. And we have Outlaws of Thunder Junction pre-releases going on this weekend, and it's a really fun format to play. I've been watching a ton of set reviews and everything like that to kind of prepare myself for an RCQ coming up that is actually for this format in particular, the sealed format. And I don't know, like, this set looks pretty amazing to me. It seems like that there's a lot of really good cards in the set, and kind of like the consensus from other players as well, that this set is pretty juiced. There's a lot of good rares and uncommons and everything in the set, and the themes and everything like that are just, they look awesome. I mean, I really can't put into more words how good like this set seems to be, and really how fun of a limited environment. And I haven't been like super hyped to play in kind of like a limited setting, you know, whether it's drafting or playing in like a sealed deck like format. And Outlaws of Thunder Junction just kind of like scratches that itch. It's like everything that I would kind of want to see from a set. So there's some very powerful bombs in the set, and even if you don't really open any of these cards, which we're going to end up going over today, you could still build a very powerful sealed deck, or even draft a very powerful deck as well, with a lot of really good synergies in the format and just a lot of fun things going on. So we're going to be going over, you know, my picks for the best cards in, you know, each color combination. I left out the bonus sheet cards just because, you know, I guess you're probably about as guaranteed to open up one of those as like the actual rares in the set, but I think it's actually, you know, I think we know that there's a lot of stinkers in there, and then like there's a few good ones, you know, like Oko is probably easily the best like multicolored card in the set, you know, but I think that would be kind of disingenuine to the set as a whole. So we're going to be going over, you know, in each color and probably the best multicolored card. I've left out artifacts just because there's not really very many artifacts in the set, you know, aside from like bonus sheet stuff. And again, I just don't think that would necessarily be fair, even though you could open up those cards as well. This is strictly going to be the cards in Outlaws of Thunder Junction that I like the most, that I think are going to be some of the best cards in the best colors, and that's just kind of gathering information and kind of seeing what everyone else has, you know, thrown out their opinions and everything. So with all that said, and before we get into, you know, our first pick, we're going to be going in Wooburg order. If you are not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more content, where I do a lot of modern and pioneer videos, and I do all these other longer form of videos, if any of that interests you, please consider subscribing to the channel and ring the notification bell so you know when future videos get posted. And I recently am able to have members on the channel, so if you want to support my content even further, if you so choose to, you know, go ahead, check out the tiers and stuff. We're going to be adding stuff as we kind of go on. You know, this is just kind of like the baseline stuff that I wanted to get out, you know, while I was thinking about it, and, you know, just to have it up there for people to further support the channel. And I'll have a video kind of explaining more of how memberships and stuff plan to work and kind of like the future of those in a separate video. But with all out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at our first card in the color white for the Outlaws of Thunder Junction limited environment. So my pick for the best white card in the set is Dust Animus, and it is a 1 in a white for a 2/3 spirit with flying that says if you control 5 or more untapped lands, Dust Animus enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters and a lifelink counter on it, and can be plotted for the same cost, a 1 in a white. So plot real quick says that you can pay the plot cost, so in this case 1 in a white. You exile this card from your hand and you cast it as a sorcery on a later turn without paying its mana cost. You can only plot as a sorcery, then you can only cast the card as a sorcery, and it is face up, so your opponents kind of know what is going on when you plot something, which is, I mean, to me, kind of weird. Like, I guess it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, you know, anyway. So this card is like a 2-mana 2/3 flyer. In the absolute worst case, is pretty good stats. I mean, you're going to be able to block a lot of like the smaller creatures. Like in the early game, you're going to be able to get in and attack and kind of, you know, use your other bigger creatures to kind of stall out the ground. And this card's going to be able to get in and attack. You know, having 3 toughness, I feel like, is very crucial in a world where like a lot of 2-power creatures exist. So I think Dust Animus is just like a 2-mana 2/3 flyer. You know, at the very worst is pretty good, honestly. And even getting 2 plotted as well, you know, it kind of synergizes with a lot of the other cards, like in the blue-white color combination in particular, that care about you not casting spells from your hand. So just getting to plot something, you can play like one of your 3 or 4 mana like payoffs for that, and then you can play a Dust Animus as well, or again like hold on to it. You know, there's plenty of things that you can do to kind of get some good benefit of being able to plot this card. And then in the absolute best case, you have 5 or more untapped lands, enters the battlefield, and it ends up being a 4/5 with a lifelink counter on it. 4/5 flying lifelink creature is just going to be able to get in for so much damage. It's going to be able to swing races in your favor, whether this thing is staying back on defense and kind of forcing your opponent to figure out a way to push through enough damage to make the lifelink plus blocking another creature not matter. And then in their case, they're also trying to figure out how they're going to kill a 4/5 flyer that is just going to absolutely bash them for 4 each turn. Especially this coming down in the late game, you trade off a bunch of creatures. You get to a board stall where you have your big creature, you have their big creature, play a Dust Animus, and then it's basically a 4/5 flyer, and you have all your mana untapped, or at least most of your mana untapped, to obviously get the benefit of having a Dust Animus. So, a really good card overall. I think a lot of the other people that I've seen do set reviews and everything, and all the set reviews I watch, have Dust Animus as one of the best creatures in the format, period. And I think it's easily one of the best white cards. I think the Final Showdown, the instant speed Wrath that can also make creatures lose all types and lose all abilities, and of course make one of your creatures indestructible. It's probably up there as well. There's some really good white cards, but I think Dust Animus kind of takes the cake as the best white card in the set. So let's move on to our blue card. Geralf the Fleshwright is a 2 and a blue for a 2/3 legendary creature human warlock. So already it kind of has some synergies with a lot of the joins up cards, which are a lot of the other named outlaws, kind of like Tiny Bones and Rakdos and things like that. So this will be able to trigger some of those cards, even though maybe you're not necessarily playing those ones. There are quite a few that you can kind of trigger with Geralf. So just something to kind of know. And I believe Warlock is also an outlaw as well. So some outlaw synergies there as well. So before we even get into the card, already seems pretty good right there. And then whenever you cast a spell during your turn, other than the first spell that turn, create a 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature token. And then whenever a zombie enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on it for each other zombie that enters the battlefield under your control this turn. This, to me, feels like a card that is absolutely insane. So 2 mana, 2/3, the stats, fine, whatever. The fact that we have the plot mechanic in this set means that you can kind of, plot a few cards, and you play a Geralf, and then, you have mana up, plus you have these plotted cards, so you're able to play Geralf, and then you're going to, cast a free spell. Actually, even when you play this card, it's your first spell, so then you're going to end up playing, 1 or 2 plot cards, maybe a card from your hand, you cast 3 spells. You make 3 2/2s, and I think that already would be pretty good. But then you add the fact that, the first zombie is going to enter, it's not going to get a +1/+1 counter. Then you're going to end up making a 2/2 zombie that's going to get 1 counter, and then you're going to make a 2/2 zombie that's going to have 2 counters on it. So there you have 9 power added to the battlefield in 1 turn. And with the cheap blue spells that are in the set, and of course just being able to pair it with red for a lot of the other benefits that you're going to get from casting multiple spells a turn, you're going to be able to easily build around Geralf the Fleshwright with some of the other, I believe it's Slick Shot something, is a red and a blue to deal 2 damage to something, and then if you've cast another spell this turn, you get to draw a card. So you have ways that you can kind of cantrip, you can kind of keep your hand full, be able to make a few zombies with this on 1 turn, and then if you get to untap with this, just have all your mana available to you, maybe have some other plotted cards that you're going to be able to kind of go off and do it again and make a bunch of zombies, and then they're going to get progressively bigger and bigger. So I think this can easily, create a board stall of its own. 2/3 is decent stats, for 3 mana. And again, just the fact that we have the plot mechanic where even if you, play something on 1, you plot a card on 2, and then play Geralf on 3, and then you play another spell, well, then you're going to end up having a 2/2 for your troubles in the very worst case. And while that isn't nearly as exciting, again, the longer that you're able to wait, the more zombies you're able to put into play, the bigger those zombies will be. And then from there, you're just going to be able to go absolutely kind of nuts with this card, and again, be able to kind of swing races in your favor, or gum up the ground and kind of have some of your other flying threats, or maybe some of the other haymakers, if this somehow isn't the haymaker, to kind of break up the board stalls and everything like that. And of course, keep the cards kind of flowing, so maybe you can trade off a bunch of your zombies. You're trading essentially tokens for real cards. not to mention the other spells that you played as well to actually trigger the draw off. So insane potential. I think this is definitely like a really, really high upside blue card that plays very well into what blue is trying to do, and really kind of like what the blue-red archetype wants to do, which is casting, at least 2 spells during a turn. So definitely this in conjunction with like the plot mechanic is going to work very much like in your favor, and draw off the flush right could be absolutely nuts if you open it up in your sealed pool, or if you're able to draft it. I think definitely, a pack 1 pickable card, and that is not going to be a card that you end up cutting unless there's absolutely no, blue or red cards that you end up getting in your deck. But if you're able to draft at least a halfway decent, spells deck, draw off is going to be an insane, finisher, and in a way a starter for that deck. So that is my pick for the best blue card in the set. Let's go ahead and move on to the red or green card. No, black card. Gisa, much like our friend Gerald that we just saw in the, like 10 seconds ago, Gisa the Hellraiser is an absolutely insane card. So 3 and double black for a legendary creature, human warlock, with 4 as a 4/4. Already good 5 mana 4/4. Has ward 2, pay 2 life. So you have to pay 2 mana and you have to pay 2 life if you want to, resolve the spell that is targeting Gisa the Hellraiser. It's skeletons and zombies you control get +1/+1 and have menace. And whenever you commit a crime, create 2 tapped 2/2 blue-black zombie rogue creature tokens. This ability only triggers once each turn. So unlike Gerald, where you're able to, potentially cast multiple spells, create multiple zombies, and get bigger zombies progressively as you cast more spells, Gisa only kind of wants you to find ways to commit crimes on each turn. So you're able to, commit a crime on your turn, you're going to end up making 2/2/2s. And then if you're able to commit a crime on your opponent's turn, you're going to make another 2/2/2s, and so on. So you can kind of just keep things rolling in that sense, where if you're able to commit crimes pretty consistently and there's some decent enablers, in creatures and things like that, where you can continue to commit crimes. Deserts are kind of a notable card as well. I've heard like LSV specifically talking about like waiting until turn 6. If you have like a desert, you play like your 5th land, say go do something, and then on turn 6 you end up playing the Gisa, and then you play like a desert, target your opponent, ping them for 1. You're going to make 2/2/2 zombies, and if you get to untap with this, it's absolutely going to take over the game. I think Grave Titan and kind of like the other cards that are related to that are, fan favorites, I would say, for like Magic players. And it's always just a fun card to kind of mess around with. And Gisa kind of gives you that same feeling where you're able to easily, even if you don't necessarily have any mana to play spells or activate abilities to commit crimes, there are lands that are able to do such a thing. So you're able to get value from it. You're going to make 2/2/2s. Your opponent's going to have to spend a card and then the rest of their mana and 2 life to get rid of this card. So they're not effectively adding to the board where you got to put 4 power into play. I would say is like, fairly good. Obviously not what you want to have happen, but if you get to untap with this card, you just get to go absolutely nuts. It is a must-kill, must-remove spell in your deck, and it is increasingly difficult to get rid of it and to do it effectively and efficiently with the removal that is available to you in the format. So this gets my nod for the best black card in the set. I don't really think there's any other like just mono black cards that can kind of like touch Gisa. I mean, this is absolute bomb.com, like best black card in the set to me. And again, just with how easy it seems like it is to commit crimes, if you're able to build around this card, I would say that you have a pretty hard press to not win a game, or not to win your draft pod or whatever with this card in your deck. As long as you see it, in most of your games, like I would imagine that if you get to play this card, you are somewhere north of like 80% to actually like win the game and everything. So that's Gisa. That is my best black card for the set. Let's go ahead and move on to our best red card in the set. All right, but who could have seen, Mythics just being like the absolute best cards to play in the set, right? So for red, we have Terror of the Peaks. This is a card that was reprinted. I believe it was originally printed in a core set, and 5 mana 4/4 flying dragon. already really good stats. And then spells your opponent's cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. So this is essentially like, I guess not really, kind of an impact Tremors, but cares about the power of your creatures. Your opponent is going to, definitely be down and dinged a ton of life by having to pay 3 life to counter spells that target Terror of the Peaks. A 5/4 flyer is just super aggressive, where it's going to end up dealing tons of damage. And if you get to untap with this, you just play like another 5 or 6 drop, or you have, again, your plotted spells. You're able to play your creatures, and you're able to ding your opponent for tons and tons of damage. Let's say in the worst case, like 5 damage a turn is pretty nuts, honestly, for the fact too that you're going to be able to attack with this. Your opponent's not really going to have very many profitable blocks for a 5 power flyer, and probably not a lot of like flying power in the air to deal with 4 toughness as well. They're probably gonna have to use like a combat trick or something like a removal spell on top of it to kind of get rid of it. And again, like, it doesn't really work out in their favor, because they're either going to lose life from targeting it, or they're going to lose life from you playing creatures. They're going to lose life from it attacking and just going unblocked. Your opponent is not going to live for long with a Terror of the Peaks in play, and this is an absolute must kill card. It's an absolute must play card. Double red at 5 mana, totally fine. At least I think if you, you're able to build effectively around this. We know that the green-red archetype has a ton of big, cheap, efficient creatures, that only really get better, if you give them an ETB to just dome your opponent for 4, 5, 6 damage. And then, of course, give them haste and trample, whatever. This card's just a monster. Like, this card is, makes all of those already, pretty efficient, pretty good, green-red creatures, and just makes them infinitely better. Even in like red-white, you still have some pretty powerful creatures, with a little bit of toughness, which is fine. You play a 2 mana 3/1, you're gonna hit your opponent for 3. Maybe you have some mount creatures, you're gonna be able to mount them with those creatures, and then kind of get additional value that way. Terror just wrecks your opponent and puts terror in their heart, because this card is going to absolutely kind of blow up whatever game plan they have. And even in the worst case too, like, Terror of the Peaks ability doesn't have to hit the opponent. It can just hit another creature as well. So like, you could just play a big creature and you essentially get like a fight trigger, where you're going to play like a 4/4, you take out their 3/3, your 4/4 is not going to have any damage on it, and with the ways to like give haste and the green-red archetype period, you're going to be able to attack and then force your opponent to end up losing another creature, which they could block the Terror of the Peaks, but then they're also losing their creature and they're dying to the other powerful thing, which is probably their best case scenario. Or they have to get rid of the other creature, Terror gets to stick around and potentially pick off any more creatures. So easily, to me, far and away, one of the best red cards in the set. There's a lot of good ones in the format, but I think this one is like slam dunk, probably the best one, and everyone else is kind of fighting for second place. So now that's Terror of the Peaks. That is our red card. Let's move on to our final monocolored card of the set. I mean, really, who could have foreseen, Mythics being some of the best cards to play in the set? Who knew? So, moving on, we have Railway Brawler, which is a 3 and double green for a 5/5 reach trample. It is a Rhino Warrior, so notably no outlaw synergies. But whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is its power, and you can plot it for 3 and a green. Another creature that is going to pay you off for playing other creatures that have a lot of power for a cheap cost. Getting to plot this on 4, and then, play your 5th land, presumably, and then play this Railway Brawler. And then, best case scenario, you play a 5-drop, end up playing like a 5 mana 4/4. It ends up being like a 5 mana 8/8. You play a 5/5, it's a 10/10. Even getting to play like 3/1s, the 3/1s end up being 6/4s, which are some pretty impressive bodies, all things considered. So Railway Brawler is definitely going to be a card that is going to swing combat generally in your favor. So this is going to end up making, like the sure shots and things like that. The 4 mana 4/4s are going to make them 4 mana 8/8s that are going to have Ward 2 and then be able to give your other creatures haste, which this is going to make all your 2/2s and a 4-power things. They're going to have haste. Thanks to that. Again, some like good green-red synergies here. But like pair this with like really any other kind of archetype. I mean, anything that like really wants to play creatures, which is going to be all of them in like the limited format, because you're going to be playing usually a higher density of creatures than you are like other non-creature spells. And Railway Brawler is just going to absolutely be able to help you run away with the game and absolutely railroad your opponent. Like, really, the fact that your opponent is going to have to get rid of this card, and even if you play like one big creature, you know, and you get the value from Railway Brawler, and then your opponent is able to untap and like kill this thing, you still got, you know, potentially, you know, an extra 5 power put into play. You know, on top of that too, again, like if this just goes unchecked, like every small creature that you have in your deck, you draw like that 1 or 2 mana spell late in the game, and you have a Railway Brawler, it ends up being like a 2 mana 4/4 or something like that. Or again, like you have 2 mana 3/1s that really aren't that impressive. That's now a 6/4. You know, you play like a 1 mana 1/1, it's a 1 mana 2/2. Again, like not super impressive, but again, you just kind of have like these high toughness, you know, or rather these like high-powered creatures that really don't have a lot of toughness. Railway Brawler is going to be able to train them up and be absolutely super formidable for your opponent to actually deal with, and it's going to turn every single creature, almost regardless of mana cost, into an absolute bomb threat that they need to take care of. So Railway Brawler gets my pick for the best green card in the set. You know, really no ifs, ands, or buts. The ceiling is incredibly high on this card, and the floor is like your opponent, you know, price has to spend like one of their best removal spells to end up dealing with it in a deck that is going to just have a ton of monsters, or ideally a ton of monsters that are all going to kind of demand some really good answers. And while definitely they're going to be ahead because this is, again, one of the best creatures that you could play in the format, period, and they're going to get value from like the removal spell, it's not really going to matter because, again, like in the chances that they don't have this card, or that they don't have a removal spell and you just have this in play, you're going to get so much value. You know, you're essentially going to win the game. Kind of like, you know, Gisa or like Terra of the Twin Peaks. Like if you resolve them and you're able to untap with them, you're almost assuredly going to win the game. And, you know, I think that this card is just kind of no different. And I think no different from all the other spells in the set, and like some of these, rather the cards that we went over in this video, where if you resolve them and you're able to get any amount of value from them, maybe draw off a little bit more so than the rest of them, but if you're able to play like 1 or 2 creatures, you're able to commit a crime, whatever, they're all going to give you a high likelihood of winning the game. So that's Railway Brawler. That is my pick for the best green card in the set. Let's go ahead and move on to our final card, which is going to be, to me, the best multicolored card in the set. So let's go ahead and check it out. So here we have my pick for the best multicolored card in the set, in Rakdos the Muscle, a 2 double black and red for a 6/5 flying trample demon mercenary legendary creature. So already, again, you kind of have those legendary creature synergies. You know, Rakdos joins up is a pretty good one too. It's like basically like a reanimate, you know, a 5 mana reanimation spell. You know, that's going to work out really well with getting back, you know, probably your best creature, putting 2 +1/+1 counters on it, whatever. But Rakdos the Muscle in particular is very powerful. So 6/5 flying trample for, you know, 5 mana is really good stats, and I mean just really, 2 really good abilities. You know, again, we talked about your opponent having, you know, not really that big flyers, you know, 2 and 3 power flyers. So like the Animus is going to be able to get in and deal a ton of damage, but Rakdos is going to basically take those creatures and absolutely just run them over. Even if they have, you know, a few 2/2 flyers in play, it's not going to be enough to deal with Rakdos. And given the rest of the card too, you're going to kind of see why that won't even cut it as well. So whenever you sacrifice another creature, exile cards equal to its mana value from the top of the target player's library until your next end step. You may play those cards, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. You can sacrifice another creature to give Rakdos the Muscle indestructible until the turn. You tap it, and you can activate only once each turn. So this is going to be a way that if you have some bigger creatures, you're kind of in that board stall, you know, your opponent's getting low on cards, you're able to sacrifice some of your more expensive cards, you know, your 4 and 5 mana cost creatures, to not only protect your Rakdos from potential removal spells, or, you know, have it survive combat because you can attack and then, you know, sacrifice, you know, one of your 4 or 5 mana cost cards, you know, maybe do it like, you know, before, you know, during the blocker step, depending on what happens, really. You know, you're able to get in your damage, you're able to sacrifice it, you know, look at, you know, 5 cards from your opponent's library and then play, you can play those cards. So I mean, you can play lands from their deck. So if you have you find like a desert, you can play it, fix your mana, and then technically commit a crime as well, and even committing a crime by activating Rakdos's ability, kind of getting those crime synergies going. And then in the very worst case, you can mill your opponent out. If you end up milling your opponent for 5 and then you mill them for another 4 cards, they've essentially taken 9 cards off the top of their deck, and you have a ton of cards to look at to be able to play and cast from your opponent's deck without having to play any of your spells. So while they're, having to play their own spells and they're running out of gas, and you're just able to, keep cards in your hand while also just getting to play the spells in their deck, and then not even have to really worry about mana or the color requirements, because Rakdos is going to allow you to cast those cards by spending mana as over mana of any color. This card is absolutely nuts. Or even just as a standalone, where if you're just playing like a red-black deck and you really don't have very many good synergies, you just have like a lot of above rate cards. Maybe you commit a few crimes here and there. Rakdos is going to kind of convert those other creatures into cards, in his own little unique way. There's some other kind of like sacrifice synergies in the set, but really Rakdos is the only one that you need. The fact that it has a really good ability, and then its activated ability synergizes very well with the, kind of like the benefit of playing this card by wanting to sacrifice creatures. This is going to end a game. All the cards that we've looked at, they are going to, one way or another, end the game. Rakdos is either going to end the game personally at his own hands, or he's going to mill your opponent out, which seems very demure of him and in kind of like its own Rakdos way. But, it's a really good card. To me, it's probably the best multicolored card in the set. Absolutely, you should play this card. It is bonkers. You're one way or another, you're going to be able to end the game. Like, if this sticks around, you're going to end the game. Your opponent's either going to run out of cards in their library, or you're just going to absolutely run them over with their own cards. I believe a few cards in the set as well. I believe like one card in particular synergizing well with like having creatures that aren't necessarily that you control but you don't own. So something neat to think about there as well, as like a potential build around card, as Rakdos will honestly be one of your best, if not probably the best creature that you can play in the set as well. So that is my review of some of the best the best multicolored card and the best single colored cards in the format. Overall, like, I'm super happy to potentially play the Outlaws of Thunder Junction, play in the limited space and everything. There is quite a few cards I think could see some potential play, and definitely in standard, being players, and them even making an impact in the Pioneer and Modern format. But like the limited format, the synergies and like the power of the format and everything like that just looks like a lot of fun, honestly. Like it really kind of ignites that fire to like want to draft a ton and play a ton of sealed deck and play, in the RCQs that are kind of like these sealed and limited environments, rather than playing in like something like Pioneer or whatever, which, I mean, Pioneer's even in a decent spot now. So this RCQ season seems like it's going to be really good. And if you can make it out to pre-release, if you can make it out to, some kind of, draft, limited, anything like that, I would highly advise you to do so, definitely in the early stages of Outlaws, as we kind of, shake out what, is actually going to be good. But I believe no matter what, like, these cards are going to be very, very powerful unless something changes. So that's going to be in this video. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Comment down below, what is your favorite card from the Outlaws of Thunder Junction set? Subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell if you want to support my content. And even if you want to support me further, go ahead and click the join button that you see here, and you can end up becoming a member and support me even further as we kind of move towards our goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So that's going to be me in this video. Hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next one.